Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I'm echoing. Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the background noise. Ola, please can you? Thank you very much. So good evening, everyone. So for tonight's session, we'll continue with testing types and we're looking at dynamic testing. So this is where our automation actually comes into place. But last week we discussed static testing. And we found that static testing is just when we look into code bases, we look into documentation, and that's what static testing is all about. So we're not really doing anything and we're not really testing for changes like that. So for tonight's objectives, we look into what is dynamic testing, why dynamic testing, sorry about background noise, I'm very sorry. Why dynamic testing matters, dynamic testing types, functional testing types, non-functional testing types, regression testing, and look into other dynamic testing types and techniques. Then we look into what are the decisions we can make when picking our testing types. So what exactly is dynamic testing? So dynamic testing is a software testing technique, or rather a type of software testing that involves executing the software to evaluate its behavior during runtime. So the keyword here is during runtime. So that is why it's dynamic, because in a runtime or in programming world, we can get different results in the runtime. So that's why the dynamic testing is the only difference is just once you execute it, you want to evaluate the behavior, that is the result during the runtime. And online static testing, which analyzes code without execution, the dynamic testing focus on the functional and the runtime behavior of the software. And not only functional, it also involves non-functional behavior of the software. It also ensures application meets the specified requirements and performs as expected under various conditions. So if you look into maybe that's a login page now, if you want to test a login, right? And maybe there's a user story for the login functionality you want to test. So you will test it under various possibility. Maybe you use automation to test different maybe this email is valid. You use automation to try to more like even break into the software. It can also be in sense of security, or it can also be in sense of performance. So if I log in with a valid user, how many seconds does it take for me to get into the website? Do I take more than 1 minute? Maybe the performance and the performance is really, really poor, or is there a vulnerability? Can hackers see the code in the server side? Because in the world of software, we have the client side, we also have the server side. So with the help of dynamic testing, we can get to see that we can test that functionality. Another one is dynamic testing is also referred to as validation testing, because it validates the software functionality, the performance of the software, and the reliability by observing its actual execution. So, and dynamic testing executes the software, or it may just be part of the software to validate behavior against requirements, detect defects, and assess runtime characteristics. It is runtime observation. Like I said, it depends on the runtime, the result you get from the runtime, fault detection, behavior, validation, and performance measurement. So those are the key characteristics. The runtime observation to detect faults, behavior validation, and performance measurement. So that's the core functionality of dynamic testing. Or this is why dynamic testing is way different from static testing. So why does dynamic testing matter? So the first one is patches or it helps to detect runtime defects that static analysis can't. For instance, memory leak. So memory leak, you can't look at a source code and understand and find that oh, this is actually leaking memory because it's not something you just see even for experienced programmers, right? That write is that are actually program in unsafe languages like C++ and Rust. They still need to execute it and do some performance testings or in order for them to find that the memory is leaking. Another one again is race conditions. So race conditions can also be detected by dynamic testing. So a race condition is actually okay now. Let me just explain what race condition is. So it has to do with concurrency and multi-threading. So now imagine you want to buy two things from sorry, two people want to buy same products. You just want that remains from Amazon. So if they don't protect their software and their database properly, they're going to have a risk condition. So that's one way you can have a risk condition. Now, those two want to buy the same software, but the way Amazon resolve risk condition is so if the 10 person that click on buy, right, they are going to lock it. So there's something they call locking mechanism. So they are going to lock it. Then if the person did not complete his transaction, maybe the transaction failed, then they will open it again. And the person that wants to buy is going to be on a queue, and that person is going to be the next available buyer to buy. So that's how it kind of works. So that's a simple analogy. But it does have to do with like trying to access the same data at the same time. So that is race condition. And it's really complex. So there are way complex cases where you can have race condition. So and now then is integration fault. So this really occur in or this can be gotten in integration testing, and also it's a common error in microservices. So with microservices, you have different service layer. So for instance, if we are to build a e-commerce website like Amazon or eBay, we could have a service for just authentication alone. We could have another service um for the user data. So authentication and user data, they need to talk to each other. They need to communicate with the help of an API. So, but if they don't communicate properly, right, we can't see that by just looking at the code base. If we don't run it, if we don't execute it, so oh, this thing, maybe there's the user details is not properly being sent by the auth, then we say, okay, this. But if you look at it in the documentation or in the code base, you think that everything is working as expected. So this is another reason why dynamic testing is really important. Another one is to validate requirement end to end. So there's also a type of testing called end-to-end testing where we do the unit testing, the functional, the integration. It's more like everything altogether testing. But we can't do that. We can't achieve a full end-to-end testing with um just static testing alone, but we can with dynamic at least 90% of the time. In fact, in your workplace, once you get a job, you are really going to be doing static testing. You do more dynamic testing. That's where you start hearing automation and like for generally speaking, you do more of dynamic testing than um static testing. So another one is it helps to measure non-functional properties like latency. So latency is measured in milliseconds, how fast your website is. So the throughput, the resource usage for so the resource usage is like your RAM because even if we have a website online, the website is run on a cloud server, and that cloud server, right, is also measured by RAM and ROM and or in CPU usage and RAM usage. So if it's actually like very intensive website, even if it's just logged in, that means your code is not written properly and you need to maybe rewrite your code or change some stuff because in the world of programming, a lot of people just use things or they just take things that they are not using because of future use. They are planning for the future that doesn't exist, like one of um a popular software developer will say. Another one again is to ensure regression or ensure regression are detected early in the life cycle. So we'll talk a little bit about regression testing going forward. Nice. So, so classification of dynamic testing. Okay. So generally speaking, dynamic testing are divided into two, which is the functional and the non-functional part. And the functional is what the system does, e.g., the features, the business logic. So what you really be testing throughout your whole 3 months is going to be functional testing. But we also have the non-functional side of things, which is how the system behaves. For instance, performance testing. So if we have hundred thousands of users simultaneously using our website or our application, what's going to happen? Can we predict that? Yes, with the help of non-functional testing, you can do that with tools like JMeter. You can do that. And that one is again is security testing. We talk about how security testing, we can do security testing with static analysis, and I showed you how we can do that in JavaScript. But you can also do that in the world of dynamic testing. For instance, there are tools that you can also use for security testing. Another one again is usability testing. How usable is your website? Some people that are deaf and don't use your website and going to work properly. A lot of websites, modern websites, don't even think of usability, especially those that have been generated by AI. So if you say, oh, AI generate this code, fine, it's going to generate it for you. But when it comes to a lot of testing like the security, the usability, AI doesn't get it at all unless you specifically tell it you must make sure it is usable for XYZ set of users. But that doesn't mean that it's going to also include the other side of the user. Like AI is just a robot. Okay. Then another one again is reliability testing. So how reliable is your website? Yeah, but with the help of non-functional dynamic testing, we can achieve that. Another one is regression testing. It helps to validate previous working functionality after changes. So we talked in depth about regression testing and how we can the technique. Then other types, we also have other types like mutation. So we talk about exploratory testing as part of static testing. We can also do exploratory testing as part of dynamic testing. And we have A/B testing, etc. So what is functional testing? So functional testing focuses on verifying what the system does. Right? It ensures that software features, the workflow, and business logic behave according to the requirements. So that's the key word. The feature. So your user story actually is of a function. It does a functional user story, in my opinion. It doesn't specify that your website should load within 1 second. No, if you read all the stories, it's all functional. All the business logic are functional part of the software, which you'll be focusing more on. Then, for example, if an application has a payment gateway, so the functional testing will check whether the transactions are processed correctly, whether error message appears for invalid inputs, and whether business rules like discounts or tax calculation are applied properly. The emphasis here is correctness of output, giving input without necessarily worry about performance or usability. So just like our website now, we just can we put in our website, can we put in our email, can we put in our username? So those are what we think in terms of functional testing. When we click on the button, what happened? Were we able to be redirected to the home page? Were we redirected to the sign up page? Were we redirected to the login page? Were we signed up correctly? So those are functional testing. So what's the goal of functional testing? So the goal is to verify the system meets functional requirements and produces correct output for given inputs. So if I put in a wrong email address and a wrong password, did I get a also a invalid message that says incorrect username or password? So that is the goal of functional testing. So what are the scope of functional testing or scope of functional testing? So it says individual unit up to full system behavior and user workflow. So it does unit of system behavior and user workflow. So that's what functional testing does covers. Okay. There's nothing about performance or usability of the website. Then we have techniques of testing, which we're going to discuss next week. So, but some of them are actually the black box functional testing, the white box unit test, integration test, end-to-end scenario. So with those techniques, we can actually test or we can actually test our code for our software using the functional using the techniques so we can do functional testing. So we have different types of functional testing. Right. So okay, the first one is going to be unit testing. So unit testing is a software development process where individual components such as functions, method, or classes are tested in isolation to ensure they work as intended. So the key word there is each work as a function, like a function, method, or classes. Anything that can stand as a unit. So anything that can stand as a unit is what we are testing, like be it a method, be it a function. So method is just function inside of a class. So we'll talk about that when we do the OOP side of things. So that is what we test in unit testing to ensure that, okay, for instance, if we have a function that say add two sum together, so a plus b should equals to, if you return the value of a plus b. So if we are to do unit testing, we write a unit test so to ensure that the output is actually correct. So another one we can example of it is that maybe we want to do to create a user, a function to create a user. Maybe we have a method to create a user. So that method, if we do unit testing on that method, is it playwright? Right. We need to ensure that it can produce the correct output. If I enter my user as Ola, do I get Ola is a new user in the database? So those are what we test with unit testing. It is typically the first level of testing performed before integration of system testing, and it is very, very essential for detecting bugs early in the life cycle and also improve code quality and enable easier refactoring. And to point to add to this, it is mainly done by the developer, right? Because once the developer write their code, or once before they publish, I see before they put it out their code for we the tester to test, they also need to test. Okay, and that testing they do is actually unit testing. So unit testing is mainly done by the developer, and it is also under white box testing technique, right? Then another one is component or module testing. So module testing, also known as component testing, is a type of software testing that focuses on verifying the functionality of individual modules or components of the software. So now we have unit testing. So if we say a group of units is going to be like a component. So the primary goal of module testing is to ensure that each module works correctly and meets its specified requirement before integrating with other modules. So similar to unit testing, but it's more broader than unit testing. Like we could say this is a class, right? This is like a package in Java. Does this package work correctly? Does this class work correctly? So that's when it comes to components testing. So another type of testing we have is the integration testing. So integration testing is a software testing technique that focus on verifying the interaction and data exchange between different components or modules of the software application. Now, we talk about units, we talk about components. So the integration testing comes in place of communications, data exchange between different components. So after we've done this component testing, we ensure that these components work as expected. Then we go into integration testing. How does this components talk to each other? Is he talking? Is he saying the right words? Let me put it that way. So is he sending the right data? If not, what is wrong? We need to test if it is sending the right data. So that is where integration testing comes into place. So, and this is mainly, we could say this integration testing actually comes in the form of API testing, but not necessary API testing. So, and integration testing is also done with microservices. So, like I said, we can have a auth service, we can also have a user service. So, the user service can be about the user profile, user post, receipt of the user, what the user has bought, does the user have queries? So, it's going to be under the user mode, under the user mode. Meanwhile, the authentication part, like login, the registration, sign out, delete accounts, if you group it together, can be its own component or module. So, and if they want to talk together, we need to they need to share data. Like, okay, if this user logged in, how do I know it is the right user? So that is when the authentication comes into place. It's going to get some data. Oh, this username match this username in our database, so they must be the same. Since we ensure that only people with unique email can actually register in the database. So, and once they can send data to each other, oh, this user is the one being logged in. Oh, we need to open access to these other things. Maybe the person can now change their username, the person can now change their password or their email. So that is not the integration. So we now need to test, is this sending the right data? Or if I say, oh, change password or change username, am I sending the right data? So that is how integration testing works. So it ensures that these components work together as intended when combined. And this testing is performed after unit testing and just before system testing. So it is done after unit and component testing, just before system testing. And it's aiming to identify issues that arise from integration of individual modules. So if you are trying to put them together, so another one is system testing. So this is a level of software testing that evaluates the complete and full integrated software product. Its aim is to ensure that the system meets all specified requirements and function correctly in a real-world environment. So it is done after integration testing and before user acceptance testing. So the system testing is really what we really focus on in our section, because we want to ensure that it is complete. We will focus more on the integration and the unit testing. So the integration is mainly API, like I said, but what we focus more on is going to be the system testing. So, and this is even in your real world, this is what you focus on, unless it is specified that, oh, you need to be designing API, you need to be doing API testing and the likes. But generally speaking, this is what you are going to focus more on. Then we have smoke testing, right? So smoke testing is also known as, sorry, my bad. I don't think I finished the system test. So the system testing is a level of testing also. So the aim is to ensure that the system meets all specified requirements and functionalities in a real world environment. So, and this type of testing is performed after integration testing. Okay. Then the next one is going to be smoke testing. It's also known as build verification testing or build acceptance testing. So the type of software testing performed at the beginning of the development process. Its primary purpose is to ensure that the most critical function of the software application are working correctly after a new build or significant changes have been made. So the smoke testing is like, okay, we already have the software. Now the developer has developed a new functionality. So maybe in the next sprint, now the developer has added another thing to the next sprint. So another functionality to the website in the next sprint. So we, the tester, we need to test that, and that is called a smoke testing. But we're not just testing the new changes when it comes to smoke testing. We are testing the most critical functionality of the software that are working correctly. Ah, so, like for instance, now we've already passed the logins phase, we passed the registration phase, and now we're in the maybe instructor phase. Maybe we want to design a screen for the instructor. So in our case, our smoke testing is going to be the registration and the login because those are the most critical functionality of our software. If the user cannot log in or cannot register, then there's no point in because even if they can, they won't be able to see the instructor page. They won't be able to like hire the instructor in our case. So smoke testing, after changes have been made, you are testing the most critical functionality to ensure that they are working correctly after a new release or after any new changes have been made. The next one is, oh sorry, the next one is stability testing. Sorry about that. So stability testing is a type of software testing that is performed to verify that specific functionalities work correctly after minor changes. It involves like a bug fixes or small enhancements. So our sanity testing is similar, very, very similar to our smoke testing. But now for this one, it can happen anytime in the life cycle. Like this one maybe occur maybe in the beginning of the life cycle, this anytime in the life cycle. So it can just be minor. So that minor change can go, oh, they just fixed the login page. We need to test it. So when we are testing it, we are doing extensive testing. So it is a narrow check that ensure that the core functionality remain intact, like similar to this, the critical functionality, and no new defects have been introduced. So this focus testing is practically concluded after smoke test. So after you've done this, it is when you now do the sanity testing again. And it is a subset of regression testing. People classify smoke testing and sanity testing as regression testing because at the end of the day, you are just it's similar to retesting. You are just testing after some changes have been made. But this focus on minor changes, and you're also testing what was being changed in sanity testing. So this focus testing is typically conducted after smoke testing and the subset of regression testing, con- concentrating on the affected areas of the application. Like I said, it is what you are fixing, the bugs that they fix that you are more testing on. This focus on the core functionality, this focus on what was being fixed. Then we have another one called the UI testing or the user interface testing. So before we even go into what is user interface testing, so user interface is what we see. For instance, now our website, our is if we log into maybe the Blue Sky Academy or RC CRC Academy, right? User interface is what you see. The website, your home page is at the user interface. What user sees is user interface, right? And user interface testing is a process that validates the functionality, the usability, and the visual element of an application user interface. So now you could see some websites, they look very, very modern, and you can look at some websites, they look as if they've not been updated ever since after they've created the internet, which is the 19th website. So for us, user interface is very, very key. For instance, if you are a startup and people see your website very old, maybe because you can't really afford a UI UX person and you just told ChatGPT to design your user interface, people will be suspicious of your user interface or your even your account or sorry, see your account, even your whole organization will be suspicious of it because they've not met your manager, but the first thing they'll meet is the website. So if you want to buy something on maybe Amazon website and you did not get a very good user interface, you are seeing something that you shouldn't be seeing. Maybe there's a lot of ads, it can even be advertisement on their website. Like, why is this website like this? I just want to buy something. Am I sure that I'm not on the wrong website? So it can leave a lot of doubt on the user side, and you don't want doubt. You want to ensure that the user actually likes and enjoy your product, starting from the website up onto what you delivering to the user. So it ensures that all UI components, such as button, the text box, the menu, the icon, right, functions as expected and meet design specification. This is very, very important, especially when you are doing mobile application. If you've noticed, if you are using iPhone, you'll notice that all iPhone applications kind of have similar text. And if you move to the Android side of things, you find that most Android applications also have similar text by default, unless you customize it yourself. So because it needs to meet Apple or Google design specifications. So each platform have different design specifications. And this type of testing is very, very crucial for delivering a seamless and a user-friendly experience. In fact, even if you don't need them, especially for Apple, they can reject your application from what I had. Right. So another functional testing that we have is actually the user acceptance testing. So the user acceptance testing is a very, very important phase in software testing. So and it is used or it's mainly really, really used in a real world scenario by end user to ensure it meets their requirement. So this is where we have the alpha testing, we have the beta testing. So and some people call it developer testing, public user testing before it go live. So it's very, very important. Unlike other form of testing, so UAT really focus on validating the software user friendliness, the functionality, and the performance from the user perspective. So our goal is really UAT, but like I said, UAT is mainly done by the BA here in the Blue Sky. But generally speaking, there are different programs that, like now, you could outsource it to external tester. Maybe you pay them per hour. So different organizations have different way of achieving user acceptance testing. But for Apple and big companies, they don't even need to pay people to do their user UAT. To just tell them that, oh, this version 1.1 pre-release is available. If you want to try it, that's fine. It's free to use. Yeah. So those are different techniques that companies actually use to get UAT. Some people pay for their UAT. Some people they just outsource it to the public and they get people to use their product and they collect feedback from them. So another one is end-to-end testing. So E2E or end-to-end is a comprehensive testing approach that validates the entire workflow of an application, ensuring all integrated components, which is the front end, the back end, the databases, the internal system work together seamlessly. It simulate real-world user scenario to verify the functionality, reliability, and the performance. So it's end-to-end just a complete testing, in my opinion, but it's really achieved because of the level of team you need team member you need to actually do that. So end-to-end testing is like team testing can be 100%. So it's only few organization, even no organization can even actually achieve end-to-end testing because people put for more focus on core functionalities over minor functionalities. So another one we have is API testing or application program interface testing. So it's a type of software testing that focuses on the testing of individual API methods and the interaction between different API. So this type of testing is typically involved performed at the integration level just after the unit testing is complete and before the user interface testing begins. So it is used to validate that the API behaves correctly and it meets the requirements of the system. So, like I said, I'll do a demo of a simple API test so you see how API testing works, but won't be looking at it at all. Okay. So we have the second type of testing of dynamic testing, which is the non-functional testing. So this is where a lot of small organizations actually misses. Okay. So non-functional dynamic testing evaluate how the system behaves rather than what it does. So behavior matters when it comes to non-functionality. So it includes aspects like performance, the security, usability, and reliability of the software. For instance, a performance testing measure response time under heavy load. Okay, so we have like load testing and different type of testing under performance testing. Security testing checks for vulnerabilities like SQL injection, and usability testing ensures the interface is intuitive. And reliability testing confirms that the system can run consistently without crashing. How reliable is your system? So there are different ways companies actually achieve reliability testing, or they ensure that their software is reliable. And these tests are really, really critical because even if a system feature works correctly, poor performance or weak security can make it unusable in the real world. So this is very, very key. Even if you've done the functional side of things, you still need to do the non-functional. Now, if it takes like 1 second or like 5 seconds for it to load, it's going to be an issue, right? If you have good security in your system, be it your web application, your database, any level of your software that you're testing, and you publish it because your developer don't know how to fix it, it's gonna be once it's exploited, it's gonna be a very, very big impact on your organization, credibility, finances, and lives. So, and if you have the combination of all, trust me, you can't even publish it unless you are doing like a MVP, which I feel that MVP shouldn't even have poor performance and weak security because you want to demo to your stakeholders that, oh, this is what I've done. So even despite it has small functionality and it has it's so weak, it's not really secure, then if it is very big, it won't necessarily be fixed. So now what is the goal of non-functional testing? Now, non-functional testing validate attributes like performance, scalability, security, reliability, usability, compatibility, and maintainability under expected and stressed conditions. So now, why is it critical? So non-functional failures often cause severe user interface impact even when functional requirement pass. So, like I said, you don't want secure or you don't want it to be non-compatible. No? So let's look into performance testing. Now, what is performance testing? So performance testing is a non-functional testing technique used to evaluate the speed, scalability, stability, and reliability of a software application under specific load. Right. So it ensures that the application performs efficiently and meets predefined performance benchmark, such as the response time, the output, resource utilization under normal and peak performance. So types of performance testing, right? So we have the load testing. So the load testing measures system behavior under expected user load. So, for instance, we can have to verify SLA. And that one again is stress testing. So we push the system beyond the limit to find breaking point and recovery behavior. So maybe you can have like maybe on normal day your daily user is 1,000 per day. Then with stress testing, you look for a way to break beyond the normal point, beyond the normal limit. Oh, can this handle 100K users? So, and there are different tools that can help us with that. And one again is spike testing. That's the sudden large load changes. So I would say it's more like a form of load testing, right? But it's just like, oh, if we just add extra 100 users instantly, maybe there's a coupon on our website, maybe we're an e-commerce website and Black Friday is, I don't know if it's there already or it's coming up. And we know that, oh, people are going to want to rush a lot of stuff on Black Friday. So that is going to, we need spike tests in order for us to like detect those kind of changes. So that's why we need to do performance testing. So if 100 users around the world, or even if it's just in the UK, actually try to get that same one product, what's going to happen to our website? So we need to think in terms of that as a user. Another one is, sorry, so we also have metrics, which is the which deals with the response time, the P95, P99, the request per second, the CPU, memory, error rate, time to recover. So those are the metrics in which we use to test our performance testing. So, and what tools we use? The tools that we use for performance testing is actually JMeter, Gatling, cases, locals, new relics, blah blah blah. Like, but the common one is actually K6 and JMeter. So JMeter is actually the old one, but if you look at the user interface of JMeter, you will run back to K6. Well, JMeter is very, very popular. Now, the next type of non-functional testing is security testing. Security testing involves evaluating a system, evaluating a system application on network to identify vulnerabilities, threats, and risks that could be exploited by malicious actors. Right. The primary goal is to ensure that sensitive data is protected and the system functions securely under various conditions. And this process is essential for safeguarding digital aspects, complying with regulations, and maintaining user trust. So if maybe you have a username and your password and it's not being encrypted, right? Maybe when you're sending it to the backend to store, it's not been encrypted and it won't still saves like in the text in the database, then it is very, very unsecure. And if it's not secure, it means it's not complying with registry with regulations such as GDPR law, which is law against how you use your users' data. So another one again is you won't be able to maintain user trust. For instance, if they say, oh, the app company XYZ, people are going to run away from company XYZ and meet their competitor because all companies in the world actually have a competitor, be it small or be it big. So if you as a company or you as a tester, you fail to ensure that the software you're testing meets security or comply with regulation, then you're going to be losing users. And once your company is losing users, you will be getting fired because the company won't be able to like won't be able to employ you anymore in the long run. So you'll also be getting fired. So you lose both way. And if they ask you, oh, you work for this company, oh, this company got hacked, means that you don't really know what you're doing, and can also make it difficult for you to find a job as a tester in the long run. So that's why you also try as much as possible to ensure that you do security testing. Though most organizations like banks, government organization make sure they have a cybersecurity expert that deals with security testing. So most of the time, I think we don't really do security testing. We just ignore it. But that doesn't mean that we can't do it or we shouldn't be involved in doing it because security is actually broad. So another one again is usability testing. So it is a form of user research where real user interacts with a product or interface to complete specific tasks. So observing this interaction allows product team to identify usability issues, understand user behavior, and gather feedback to enhance product design and functionality. So, and the ultimate goal is just to create a user-friendly experience that meets the need of target audience. Just let this was very. Then another one is compatibility testing. So, and this is very, very important, right? So it comes under the non-functional testing category and it is performed on an application to check its compatibility running as in on different platform or environments. So that's why in some companies we have dev environment, we have the um we have the dev environment, we have the production environment, we have different environments. But what I'm going to is if there's a website on Chrome and a website on Mozilla Firefox. So in world of browser, we have different platform. That's the browser what you do. So we have the Chrome or the Chromium family, which we have Chromium browser itself. We have Google Chrome, which is the original creator of Chromium browsers. We have Microsoft Edge, which is built on top um Chromium browser. We also have Atlas, which is a new AI browser created by the creator of ChatGPT. So that's a new AI browser. So it's also built on top of Chromium. Another one we have is Firefox based or Mozilla based. So that's another platform. So and these are going to work differently, right? And the way their text is going to be written, the way their website is going to be written. So if you open a website on Opera and you open a website on Chrome, it will tell you that oh, this application is not supported on Opera because of they didn't do the compatibility testing going forward. So I'll show you a website where you can look at compatibility. Then and this testing is done only when the application becomes stable, right? So once your application is done, is stable enough, right? Maybe we already passed the dev environment, then you're moving to the production environment things, or you want to publish a MVP, right? That is when you should do compatibility testing. And in Playwright automation, there are different ways we can go about it. Playwright supports multiple browsers, and you can just with a simple line of code, 2 or 3 lines, you can switch from Chrome to Firefox to Chromium to even Edge browser. Yeah, if you're on Windows, so it works on Edge or even Safari. Like the way Safari is going to display some websites will be different from the way Microsoft or Google Chrome is going to display some websites. And this means simply this compatibility test aims to check the developed software application functionality on various platforms, hardware platforms or the various software platform, hardware platform, network, and browsers. So the last one we have actually the accessibility testing. Now, it is the process of testing the degree of ease of use of a software application for individual with certain disability. Now, it is performed to ensure that any new component can easily be accessible by physical disabled individual despite any respective handicaps. Right. So there's some websites that is used for the blind. Okay. So let me just quickly before I even proceed, let me just sorry. So let me just let me just go to this website, right? So I'm going to inspect this website, right? So let's inspect some things for you. So people that are deaf actually, sorry, people that are blind actually make use of a website reader. You just want to get an image. Um, to look at, there's something, it mainly reads the area label, right? So it reads this one. So there's some website that you see that they don't have this area label, and so there are different accessibility. So are different accessibility on different websites, and there are different standards for accessibility actually. So let me look at something like this. So for a website like this, right? For a website like this that supports blind people can read in their website, right? It's going to be more accessible to blind people. So they'll have some functionality, just like how we have here. So to have some properties over here that can make it actually readable for these users. So if I sign up and I try to like start reading, so it has different color mode. So like this now, and this is not really a lot of people just do dark and white, but generally we should be able to support different mode for different based on different eyesight. So it depends on your needs. So I don't there are different websites that actually supports something like that. So that's accessibility websites. And the last one, sorry. So regression testing is performed after changes such as bug fixes, enhancements, um, enhancement, or new features are introduced into the system. So its purpose is to revalidate previously working functionalities to ensure that nothing has been broken by the modifications. For example, if a developer updates the login module, the regression testing would recheck not only the login but also related features like the password resets, the session management, and even the registration. This is going to be tested. Right. This type of testing is often automated to quickly catch unintended side effects. So regression testing are mostly automated, especially in the pipelines. So in your CI/CD pipeline, you do regression testing. So regression strategies. So we have full regression, which executes entire test suites. It is very, very expensive, but it is comprehensive, right? And it only works with when two conditions are met. The first one is that you are using automation. Second one is that you have large team that can do it. So second one is going to be selective or partial regression. So you only run tests for impacted areas determined by change analysis. So in this our case, our change analysis is just related to the login process, which is the password reset, the session management, and the registration. So they are related to the login, right? You won't be testing something like can the user um get this, maybe can the user buy it. You won't be testing that, you won't be testing related the thing is going to be affected by the changes. So or which is selective or the partial. So you just oh, this is related to the login. I'm going to test only this. But the prioritized regression, you're going to run high value or smoke tests first, right? Which are that is those are that critical to the system. High risk area. So that's what you're going to be testing, like registration, the payments. That's if you're working in the e-commerce website. So that's what you'll be testing, or that's what your focus is going to be on. The next one is going to be continuous regression, which is to automate tests on every commit on nightly build, which is the CI/CD pipeline. So for the continuous regression, you just keep running your test maybe every night or after every build. So these depend on so regression testing is not actually just you as a tester decision. You also need to involve other people such as the like the head of the your developer, how soon they want the test to be run. Even the head of the managed engineering also needs to involve that if you have in your group or your test manager. So what about other dynamic testing types? So we have the exploratory testing. So the exploratory testing is actually timed boxed, right? Is an human driven investigation. So it's guided by the tester skills, right? So you just go into a website and start doing anything you like, but you must be guided, you must be experienced. You need to know because you don't want to spend a lot of time on exploratory testing. You have your test case to design. You also have other things you need to do. And that one again is ad hoc testing. So it is unstructured and also unscripted. So it goes side by side with the exploratory testing because exploratory testing too is unstructured and unscripted, right? Another type of testing we have is the mutation testing, meaning you create small changes in code to check if test suits detect them. So it measures test suits effectiveness. This is rarely done by us because we don't really have access to the developer code base. My code base is going to be different from the developer code base. Okay, it won't be in the same GitHub repository, so I won't have time to modify it. And in fact, if I modify it and a functionality doesn't work anymore, or they can say, "Oh, I am the one at fault." So this is really done in the real world, but it's just for you to know that it exists. So you shouldn't be too surprised when you're asked to do it, but it really works or it's really used in the real world. Another one is going to be the A/B testing or the feature flag. So you are running variant in production to evaluate behavior of the system. So when to use which test? This is just a decision guide. So and this is not fixed. So it depends on the organization. This is just the general one. So when you are doing development, maybe you are seeing the dev environment, you're going to be using the unit just in component testing. It is very, very fast. These tests are very, very fast, and it is mainly used for and you get fast feedback with unit and the component testing, and you use them during development. So the pre-merge or the PR check is unit testing with some integration, and you use a linter, like I showed you. So our CI/CD pipeline has a linter. Okay, another one is going to be the CI/CD pipeline. So with the CI/CD pipeline, once our code has moved to the pipeline, which is our GitHub or Azure test environment, we are going to be doing integration testing more. We'll be doing smoke testing. We want to test um critical functionalities, right? With and selected E2E testing with static analysis. So this static analysis is available in the functionality generally of the any CI/CD pipeline, so you can detect error code in codes, syntax highlighting and the likes. And we have nightly, so there's a build called nightly build. So, but with nightly, we just do full regression testing, and we do some long running non-functional testing like performance testing. Another one is going to be pre-release, right? So when we're in the pre-release stage, we do the full system test, the performance test, and the security scan with UAT. And in production, we do observability testing, we do canary testing, we do the A/B testing, and we can do the chaos engineering, which this is already done. Our focus is going to be on the pre-release. This is what we focus more on as a tester. UAT, the security, the performance, and the food testing. You see, the rest are actually, I won't say voluntary, but even if they are necessary, our core functionality are going to be, or core function testing are going to be here, right? And besides, you won't even have time to be thinking about the rest. The developer have done the unit testing already. So why bother with the unit testing again? Even if you know developer can make mistake, right? That is why you can also do the system testing to actually cover the um your system testing should cover the unit testing. So the Q and A, do you have any question and answer? Let me just stop sharing my screen. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So, do you have any question? Any question? I will also show you a little bit of some of the type of testing I said. Any question, anyone? Okay, no question. Just share with me. Mm, well, I'm going to share my screen. I'll just show you some type of testings. So now this is, let's say this is a simple API testing with Postman. So I'm just going to create a new one. I'm gonna put it in here. So, because if this is an API test, right? So this is the API endpoint, right? Well, this is not about API testing. So if I click on next or send, so we're going to get a simple random. So let's say this is for our user. Now this is a to do so for users. Yes. So this is actually communicating with us right now. But this is how API testing is actually going to be done. And you're going to verify it. And you can write some testing to verify. You can write some script using JavaScript, right? You could also use Playwright to actually do API testing. And we'll see that in the automation section, right? But this is how API testing is done with Postman. So you just go, you put in the URL of the API endpoint you want to test, and you click on send. And sometimes you can actually add body to it. So maybe I can add body to this, and I can change it to post, and I can say, oh, I can just copy this. And I can click on send. So you can see I have created a new user. So, but API testing is way complex than this, but this is just a simple API test, right? But we'll do a little bit of API testing with Playwright going forward, but this is API testing with Postman. So, and mind you, I am talking with the backend. So the backend says it has created my new user ID as 1000. My ID is 200, right? And the name of the title is the same because I copied it and completed was also 4. So that is how Postman actually works. But there are way complex things you could do with Postman. So, enough for tonight session. Yes, Deborah, please. Deborah, your hands are up. Deborah, please, your hands are up. Oh, is that a
Please.
mistake?
Can you hear me, please?
Yes, I can.
Okay, okay. All right. I said for one of the testing, I know you mentioned. Well, my question actually is it that for each of the testing, there's a software to be used? Is it that each of, and every one of them has a software? Because I know for one of when you mentioned one of them, you mentioned something like K2. So is it that for each and every one of them they have a software to be used, or it's just one software you're going to like this one now? You just mentioned for the API, you mentioned Playwright.
Okay. Yes and no. So the first thing is that some software or some tools can actually it's just one tool, but it can do multiple testing.
Okay.
Now, for instance, Playwright can do API testing, it can do functional testing, but it can't do mobile application testing. It can also do performance testing.
Okay.
Now, performance testing to like JMeter and K8 can only do performance testing. They can't do unit testing. Playwright can also do unit testing, right? So that's why I think we're making use of Playwright. But
Okay.
generally speaking, a lot of companies want you to be skilled in many things, which I will not say is possible. It's not possible, but or it's impossible. It's something that you just get to use or get to know how to use going forward. But for now,
Okay.
majority of the company out there doesn't even require you to know more than one or two skills. Maybe Java, C Sharp, or JavaScript. Maybe using Selenium and Playwright in each of any of the languages I mentioned. But it's good that you ask the question. So don't get it wrong. One like playwright can only can do multiple, but not all. We know two is actually all in one. So if you look at job listing, you see them asking for multiple tools. Thank you. I hope I was able to answer your question.
Yes, you are. Then please, sorry, I want to also ask. I know that you said it's not all, but which I don't know if you can tell us, is it that we're going to be using most of these tests the sorry, the test, sorry, not tests. Okay, so most of these tests that was mentioned today, are we going to be carrying okay, should we put it like percentage? Let's say for all the types of testing that you mentioned today, like
Huh?
um on the level of percentage, are we going to be using 80% of to like test for example these stories that have been made by the BAs now, are we going to carry out 80% of all this testing on all of them, or are we going to carry out all the testing on all of them, all the types of testing you mentioned today?
We are going to do 20%,
20. Okay.
which is the regression testing
Okay.
and the functional testing. Or rather, let me put it the regression testing and um let's say system testing. Just to verify the user for and just to verify the user functionality that it works as expected as in user stories. The regression, once the developer fix this bug that we identify, we need to test it, right? We also need to test that one. That is also a regression testing. And maybe UAT sometime, but it's mainly done by the BA.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is like 20% of what I mentioned. So you see the non functional side of things, don't worry too much. In fact, it's complex. And ISCQB actually have specialties for this. For instance, there's performance testing specialty, there's security testing specialty. So don't worry too much about the non-functional aspect. So your focus should be more on the functional aspects and the regression side of things. And regression testing can also be functional and non-functional, in case I forget to mention that. So it's functional in the sense that you could use regression testing to identify the functional, to test the functional parts, or to retest the functional parts, and also the non-functional part. Maybe, the login has been updated. We have a faster login. So you need to, when you do your regression testing on the login using maybe K8 or JMeter, you need to test the speed of the login. But most time, if your company is not rolling their own auth, when I mean rolling, like they are not creating their authentication from scratch, maybe they are using like a cloud provider like Google, Microsoft, you will not be testing the authentication aspect. So,
Yeah.
wha- so we need to. I think later on, I think we may even discuss for the part you need to test. Maybe identifiable parts in testing. Maybe oh, if this website has some features, then you should test it this way. So I think we'll talk about it next week or next week. But I think that's most of it. But you're not going to be doing three. Just get that in mind: regression testing, system testing, and UAT.
Thank you very much.
Do you have any other question?
Please, when are we starting our automation?
On Saturday. So every Saturday you are doing automation. You can't just learn playwright and expect you'll be convinced, right? So I'm going to introduce you to playwright tomorrow. So,
Okay.
so the thing is, a lot of the time, the way you are asking now, that's what they do before in this car because a lot of people ask that oh, we want this, we want this, we want to start learning Selenium, but they don't know the foundation. It's like you saying you want to start reading and you don't even know how to. You don't even know the letters, right? You don't know sentence. You don't know word. I want to just start reading. You're not going to get it right, and you will struggle a lot. So that's why understanding foundations is better. And lastly, if you are going to be doing any interview, they won't even ask you come and write this in Selenium or come and test. They will ask you for foundation because they know a lot of people actually skip the foundation. So I hope I was able to answer your question. But we'll start introduction of playwright tomorrow. We just introduce to what playwright is tomorrow, and going forward, we'll be doing both of them together.
So apparently, it's the JavaScript that is the foundation of the automation, right?
Yeah,
But to be honest, uh, I haven't understand JavaScript at all.
you are going to struggle with playwright.
All right. I'm still watching the video, sure.
Any issue you have, just come and meet me.
All right.
I'll try my best as possible to actually answer your queries.
All right. Thank you.